Welcome to the PDA Parenting Podcast. This show will be dedicated to supporting parents raising kids with PDA autism. I'm your host, Amy Kotha, a parent coach and a mom to a PDAer myself. This podcast is here to provide you with practical insights, real-life experiences, and expert guidance to help you better understand your child and to parent from a place of connection, empathy, and understanding. Whether you're new to PDA or you're already familiar with the journey, you're in the right place. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the PDA Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Amy Kotha, and today we're diving into a topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention, but it holds so much weight in the lives of families raising PDA children. We're talking today about siblings. Now, if you're parenting a child with PDA autism, you know just how consuming the day-to-day can be, how much energy and time and even creativity that it can take to co-regulate and adapt and stay attuned to these changing needs of your PDA child. And often, even when you have more than one child, it feels like your entire world orbits around the needs of the PDAer. And that reality brings up something painful, something that if you're like me, we struggle to even say it out loud. What about my other kids? Right? So how are they doing? What are they holding inside? Am I doing enough? And how are they being shaped by growing up in a home that is by necessity designed around one sibling's nervous system? Will they carry this into adulthood? And then what is that going to look like? This episode is for every parent who has ever asked those questions in the quiet of your heart, and especially for those of you who carry guilt, who worry that maybe you failed one of your children while trying to save the other. You're not alone, and today we're going to talk about it. So, why does this conversation even matter? Well, when one child has intense needs, and whether that's PDA, trauma, chronic illness, or even something else, it changes the entire ecosystem of the family. And PDA in particular creates unique dynamics because it demands an environment that reduces perceived threats. And remember, these are threats that are perceived by the PDAer, not necessarily threats that you or I would perceive. They also require an environment that lowers demands and accommodates what is a very, very highly sensitive nervous system. And that means that we have to adjust everything. We have to adjust schedules, the way we communicate, noise levels, even your overall parenting style. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. These accommodations are necessary, but it's also true that the siblings are affected. They notice. They notice when plans change because their brother or sister can't handle it at the last minute. They notice when mom's walking on eggshells. They notice when their own feelings take a back seat, not out of neglect, of course, but just out of sheer survival. And they might not say it, they might not even know how to name it, but they feel it. And unless we name it, these kids are left to carry it on their own. So here's an example of what this looked like in my own family. So as you might or might not know, I have two internationally adopted daughters, Maya, who is PDA autistic, and Devi, who is also neurodivergent, but in very different ways. So Maya's needs were all-consuming for many years, and it started at the age of 7. Like I can literally remember the day that everything just turned a corner. So for her, she'd been masking and somehow flying under the radar until then, with what we just felt at the time were probably signs of trauma or attachment disorder relating to, these early life experiences that she had had in the orphanage in India. She had a rough start in life. And, her early years, she definitely had some emotional dysregulation. And she did seem pretty controlling when she played with other kids, or, well, frankly, I guess, even with me. But it felt manageable and maybe just a little bigger due to her stage of development. But at the age of 7, her behavior suddenly became explosive. And it seemed all of a sudden like her anxiety was completely running the show for her. And there were these long seasons where every day felt like a crisis or an emergency. And during those seasons, Davy, who was my super curious, charming, observant, creative kiddo, Davy struggled to manage. First, she became what I called the entertainer, and then she became the easier one. So when things were at their most confusing, their most perplexing, like most unpredictable, and let's just say it, it was downright scary. During those times, Davy became a jokester. So she would act super silly. And, over time, it didn't take long to figure it out, but over time, we figured out that that was her trying to diffuse escalating situations whenever they started to come up. And she would try to get everyone's attention off of Maya's struggle and onto her. And she became so in tune with the energy that was going on around her that she could tell that it was happening even before I could. So she would be loud, she would throw her body around, and she just commanded attention with this extreme silliness. And frankly, it was very hard to parent. Like it was different than Maya, but it was very difficult as well, super challenging. And it often didn't achieve what she was hoping, right? So she would often even add gas to the fire and escalate the situation more than it already was. But she tried. She had a great therapist actually who helped her through this and was able to like put an end to this overwhelming behavior. So that was good. However, then it became more of the withdraw and be easier behavior. So she became the one who didn't ask for much, the one who can be extremely loud and used to be loud like all the time. She became quieter, so she wouldn't set off her sister. And, I saw it happening, but I had to make choices because I was so deep in trying to keep the entire house and family from imploding or exploding that, it was an impossible, crappy choice that sometimes happens to us as PDA parents. So I had to make a decision and I had to figure out how to balance my time. And it's never easy, but it's almost impossible in many of these situations that we face. So Davy has actually said to me, we've had several discussions about this, of course, over the years. We talk about it quite often. But she came to me once and said, Mom, I know Maya needs more from you, but sometimes I need you too, and I'm afraid to ask. And hearing those words, hearing that this kiddo was afraid to ask for her needs to be met, oh, it was so hard. It was just literally just heartbreaking because our guilt in these situations is real, but so is the opportunity to repair. And it's in that repair where all of us begin to heal. So let's talk a little bit about common patterns in siblings who are in high stress families. So in homes like ours, where chronic stress was present, kids and parents can both fall into these unspoken roles as a way to cope. So don't think of these as bad roles. They're not bad. They're adaptive. They're the nervous system doing its best, but they're limiting. And when they're present and rigid over time, they can shape a person's identity in some very painful ways. So let me walk you through a few common roles that show up, both in the siblings and in the parents. But right now, we're just going to concentrate on the sibling lens. So don't be surprised when I walk through these if you hear your family in these, because I would be shocked if you didn't. So the first common role is called the hero. So this child strives to be perfect. They overachieve, they take on extra responsibilities, they try to be the good one. And you often see them as well having issues with perfectionism in school. They're often suppressing their own needs because they sense that the family can't handle one more thing. And then the next role is called the mascot. The mascot, which will sound familiar if you just heard my story about Davy, the mascot is also called the entertainer or maybe comic relief. So they use humor or charm to ease tension in the home. But underneath, they're likely carrying massive anxiety that they just don't know how to express in any other way. The next role would be the lost child. So the lost child withdraws to stay out of the way. This person becomes invisible, like quiet, self-sufficient, emotionally disconnected. They don't demand attention, but they're often carrying a big silent pain. So a child in this role might disappear into books or art or screen time. I hear that a lot. I see it a lot in my own family. They might feel like their needs aren't important. And, from hearing Devi's story, you can see this is the role that she morphed into. And frankly, she still struggles with these feelings even up to today. And we talk about this a lot. The next role is the scapegoat. So this child might act out or challenge authority. They often become the identified problem, even if their behavior is really simply a symptom of stress in the family. They can act out, resist, or express the distress that everyone else in the family is feeling, but they can't say. And this is often the PDA child, but not always. The next role is the enabler or the avoider. And that person tries to keep peace by minimizing conflict or walking on eggshells. And this role often involves protecting others from discomfort, but they might unintentionally prevent accountability or change or honesty. It's often a parent, but an older child actually might be in this position, and you might see it as a child who's trying to smooth over tension or even parent their parent. So these roles, they can shift over time, they can kind of overlap each other. They're not fixed, but the important thing is that these patterns are not about personality, they're about protection. And breaking them down like this and talking about them can help us bring it into awareness, help us be a little more intentional when we look at our kiddos. So let's pause here because this is where I want to speak directly to you, the parent who is listening, who feels like they screwed this up. Maybe you feel like you didn't protect your other children enough, or maybe you feel like they were asked to carry too much, way too young. Or maybe you're grieving the fact that they didn't get a more peaceful, typical childhood. And you know what? That grief is completely valid. But I also want you to hear this. You were doing the best you could with what you had, what you knew, and what your nervous system could manage. We have limited capability as human beings. We can't manage everything. So you were probably in crisis yourself. You were surviving. You were loving in the only way that you could at the time. And now you're here. You're reflecting, you're learning, you're showing up with intention. And that's what makes changes. That's what makes repair possible. So the big question, I guess, is what can we do now? So you don't have to go back and rewrite history. Not possible. You don't need to erase the hard parts. You heard a bit of my story, and my story is continuing, just like yours. As I continue to do what I can to stay aware of and try to avoid these roles taking shape again in my family, it's something I have to be very intentional about. But it's not always possible to keep these things from happening because, first of all, the only person you can change is yourself. And, everyone in your family has to do their own work. But it is very important to be aware, especially with children. So I want you to know I completely understand, and please don't feel judged by this or like you are doing anything wrong because you're not doing anything wrong. But here's what you can do to maybe better support the siblings and make occasional repairs that are within your capacity. So, number one, name it. Say the unsaid. You might try something like, I realized there were times you didn't get what you needed, and I'm so sorry for that. It wasn't because you're not important. It was because I was overwhelmed and I just didn't know how to do it differently. Number two, validate their experience. Validation can go so far. Let them have their feelings without rushing to explain. Sometimes just saying, that must have been really hard is enough. I'm telling you, I say this so often, and it is always helpful. Number 3, make space for their individuality. Help them reconnect with who they are outside the role of sibling or helper or caretaker, whether that's taking part in one of their special interests, maybe a one-on-one outing, or just listening to their playlist with them in the car. These moments truly matter. Number 4, invite them to share, and make sure when you're inviting them to share that you ask open-ended questions. And if you don't know what that means, a close-ended question would be something that the answer would be yes or no. Open-ended questions are going to require maybe it will open up a little conversation. So some examples would be, what do you remember about those years? Or what would you want other parents to know? Or what helped you? Or what do you wish was different? And then number 5, model imperfection and repair. Show them it's okay to get it wrong and still be worthy of love and connection, because that is the truth for all of us. So in our next episode, I'm going to be joined by my daughter, Devi. She's 17 now, and she has so much insight into what it's been like to grow up with a PDA sibling. Her perspective is honest, vulnerable, and important. She'll share what helped her, what didn't help her, and what she wants other parents to understand. And this isn't just about supporting siblings either. Remember, it's about holding complexity, about knowing that two truths can exist at the same time. Like, I love my sibling, and it was really hard. I know why my parents gave her so much, and I still felt left out. I'm okay now, but I still carry pieces of that story. I hope you'll tune in because these conversations truly matter. Now, if this episode stirred something in you, please take a moment after listening to pause and breathe. Let yourself feel whatever is coming up, whether it is grief, guilt, tenderness, compassion. And then ask yourself, what is one small step I can take today to see all of my kids a little more clearly? Because you're a good parent. You are a growing parent. Same with myself. And this work that you're doing, this reflective, messy, healing work, it is the greatest gift you could ever give your family. So until next time, thank you for being here and for walking this road with me and for all the love and work you're putting into parenting differently.